If you've been watching our videos for some time now, then you probably know how much we love Easter eggs, both the literal and metaphorical ones. And what's better than those minute, seemingly inconsequential details we spot on popular movies and shows? Why, those minute, seemingly inconsequential details we find in the real world, of course. They give us this sense of being in the know, that exclusive feeling that separates us from those muggles and noobs. Here are 10 hidden details you totally missed in famous designs.
Amazing!
Number 10. Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors. For those of you who aren't familiar with Hans Holbein, he's one of the masters from the Renaissance period whose name doesn't end with Da Vinci. To cut it short, this guy is responsible for giving us an idea of what historical figures such as Erasmus and Sir Thomas More looked like in real life, and that's thanks to his realistic style. However, Holbein is not above adding some mean details to his work to give it some depth. Take The Ambassadors, for example, which is a portrait of Jean de Denteville and Georges de Selve. There's what appears to be this weird-looking plate right at their feet. However, if you tilt the image a little to the left and look at it from the top, you'll find that it's a skull, just rendered in anamorphic perspective. It's because Hans really liked to place references and symbolism in his works. In this case, one interpretation is that the skull represents mortality. Others, however, believe that the Ambassadors was meant to be displayed by a stairwell, and that Holbein placed the skull to surprise and shock people who get to see it as they make the climb, much like a very painstakingly crafted prank. Number 9. Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. Ah, Michelangelo. Not only are you a great Ninja Turtle, but you're also one of the greatest artists in the history of our species. Case in point, The Creation of Adam, which is housed in the beautiful Sistine Chapel. Now, what some may simply interpret as a portrayal of God's relationship with man and vice versa is actually one of the most radical interpretations of religion to have ever come out of the Renaissance. You see, God is actually inside a very particular shape, which you might notice is supposedly the outline of the human brain. So in other words, Michelangelo went past all that religious red tape when he tackled the subject of God. Some believed it's interpreted as God being the bearer of knowledge, while others think it's Michelangelo's way of flipping the bird toward the Catholic Church for rejecting scientific knowledge. Whatever it is, it's pretty. Number 8. Google's logo. Google is probably one of the most important things we have in the modern world right now. So much so that the brand has become somewhat synonymous with the word research. Despite its pervasiveness in the world and the many iterations it has gone through over the years, there's just something about the Google logo that makes it look, to be completely honest, a little too simple. Don't let that fool you though, as the company has a very specific way of creating their now iconic symbol, especially with its current form, which was created in 2015. First, of course, there's the color combination: blue, red, yellow, and green. All primary colors except for the green, which reflects the idea that Google doesn't follow the rules. Second, there's the font, which was exclusively developed by the company in 2015 called Product Sans. Finally, there's the most elusive detail of it all, the spacing between the letters, which is measured by pixels. Specifically, going from between the first G and O up to the L and final E, the pixel measurements are 7, 6, 6, 11, and 8. In other words, they're not as perfectly spaced as you might have thought. It might seem like an inconsequential detail, but it's that exact precision that makes the logo authentic. Otherwise, you just have a poor imitation of it. Talk about tedious. Number 7. The Tour de France. If there's one event where sweaty men in tight shorts are celebrated, it's the Tour de France. Also, it's the world's most prestigious bicycle race, but we love sweat and tight shorts better. That said, the Tour de France logo is actually one cute little piece of marketing that is more than just some fancy assemblage of words. You see, there's actually a hidden picture of a person riding a bicycle in there. If you look closely at the letters O, U, and R in Tour, you'll notice that it forms a figure of a cyclist. The R is the person riding the bike, and the letters O and U form the rear wheel and seat of the bicycle respectively. The logo, which was designed in 2002 by Joel Guénoun, remains the same to this day. In fact, a lot of thought was put into creating it. For one, the font style used on the logo is meant to convey this very Gallic tone. Then, there's the splashes of yellow on it, which resembles the Médaille Jaune Award for winners of the race's respective stages. And of course, there's the aforementioned hidden cyclists to properly show what the Tour de France is all about. Number 6. Da Vinci's The Last Supper. Barring the Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper is probably his most famous painting. The religious artwork depicts Jesus Christ and his apostles about to partake in a meal after a hard day's work of loving God and converting heathens to Christianity, and before Judas decided to sell out his divine brother. Now, one of the most famous theories surrounding the painting is that da Vinci purposely composed the painting to resemble a musical score, with each loaf of bread and the biblical character's hands representing a note within a scale, which forms a 40-second musical piece. The person who discovered this, Giovanni Maria Paula, mentions that the composition is akin to a requiem, and according to him, it's like a soundtrack that emphasizes the passion of Jesus, so it must sound pretty overwhelming. Since there is no evidence that da Vinci intended this to be so, we can't know for sure. It could just be a coincidence. However, given that da Vinci was also into music, it's not surprising to find out that it could have been a deliberate hidden detail within the painting. Either way, it's very impressive. Number 5. Van Gogh's Café Terrace at Night. Since we're talking about Jesus' last chow time with his posse, no entry would be better than Vincent van Gogh's Café Terrace at Night. At first glance, the painting appears to just be a post-impressionist rendition of people dining at a cafe in France during nighttime. However, there is a widespread theory that the people at the cafe actually resemble none other than Jesus and the 12 apostles. In other words, this is Van Gogh paying homage to one of the past masters. Apart from that, his father was a very religious man, which to some extent influenced his own beliefs. Or maybe this is just us reading into it too much. Like the way other people see Jesus' face on a tortilla chip. Well, giving it the benefit of the doubt, you can see that just like da Vinci's portrayal of his holy meal, 12 figures surround one man in the center, which is actually Jesus according to some scholars. And hey, the central figure in Café Terrace at Night looks like it's wearing a white robe. Isn't that Jesus' favorite attire? Oh, and look at that. There's a shadowy figure to the left that looks like he's about to leave. I hope he's not going to meet with some Romans out there to snitch on JC. That would totally suck. Number 4. Ghirlandaio's Madonna with Saint Giovanni. Domenico Ghirlandaio, although not exactly a household name like Da Vinci or Picasso, is actually one of the most important Renaissance painters in history. For one, he taught Michelangelo. Oh, and he could also be one of the earliest UFO nuts in history. This is most apparent in his painting The Madonna with Saint Giovanni, which is a depiction of Mary and her divine kid, you might know him as Jesus Christ, in a very unusual setting. Except in this case, there's one glaring detail in the background. There's what looks to be a flying saucer just behind the Holy Mother. To be fair, however, there are some who believe that the circular flying object is actually meant to be a piece of Christian symbolism. In this case, it's a star, which was commonly used by artists during Ghirlandaio's era. So, either people were hardcore into aliens way back then, or Master Ghirlandaio is one of the earliest trolls in history. Who knows? Number 3. Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. With a name like Hieronymus Bosch, it's no surprise that the man created some of the most majestic works of art in the history of man. And no work of his better encapsulates the description other than the Garden of Earthly Delights, which is a triptych that depicts the Garden of Eden, the earthly realm, and God's final judgment. Of course, one's work can't be majestic without having a few curious details in it. In Nemo's case, yes, I'm calling him that now, it's a weird fascination with the human butt. If you're eagle-eyed though, you'll find wonderful anal details in the Garden of Earthly Delights, ranging from flowers shoved into people's butts to people whose butts are facing the viewer while lifting what appears to be demonic sushi, which also has butts in it, right to the musical compositions painted on butts. Oh Bosch, you wonderful weird man. Thank you for this, you just completed our lives. Number 2. Da Vinci's Codex on the Flight of Birds. It's no overstatement when we say that Leonardo da Vinci is the titular Renaissance man. He was a painter, sculptor, musician, inventor, scientist, and sex machine. Okay, maybe I made that last part up. The point is that his contributions are so vast that he deserves to land a spot in this video twice. But the thing is, portraits of the old master are very few and far between, which is why his Codex on the Flight of Birds is one of the most surprising finds for historians the world over. You see, underneath one of its pages detailing how birds could fly and how to apply this to his inventions, there's a self-made sketch of the Renaissance mastermind's face. What we're trying to say here is that at one point in his legendary career, Da Vinci drew himself on a piece of paper just for the heck of it, then decided that that same piece of paper would be better spent on theorizing how you can make flying machines by basing it on bird movements instead of just showing his mug for the world to see. And that, kids, is how geniuses are born. Number 1. The French flag. The French flag is probably one of the most deceptively simple designs out there. After all, it's just made of 3 equally proportioned vertical stripes colored blue, white, and red. Come on, even kids can draw that. But you'd be wrong to think it was done without much thought at all. Like we said, it's deceptive. And no, the stripes aren't really proportioned. Alright, to be fair, the Nation of Baguettes and Cigarettes actually uses a version where each stripe's width is of equal proportion. But officially, there's a regulation in the country, which dates back to 1853, that opts for a 30, 33, 37 proportion measurement for the blue, white, and red sections respectively. This means that the color red is actually the widest of the 3, and blue the smallest. So why not just make the stripes share the same width? Well, it has to do with the way the stripes appear when it's hoisted up on a flagpole. When you look at it from below and it has the 30, 33, 37 scale measurement, the stripe's width appears equal to one another, otherwise they would appear disproportionate. Were you surprised by any of these, and do you know any more hidden details in famous designs? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, clicking that bell icon to never miss another video. Thanks for watching.